Hello, CFS 100 students. This is Dr. Dyer. Just here to give you a brief overview of my job, both as a professor and as a certified family life educator. You all know that professors spend a lot of our job teaching. Most college professors teach, at Fresno State anyway, we teach 4 classes a semester. That's a really heavy teaching load. Some other universities, they might teach only 1 or 2 classes a semester, but this is a primarily teaching university. So that's where you interact with us mostly. But professors also have 2 other jobs. One is that we do research. My research is in the area of infant sleep and also in the area of critical thinking. Research is super exciting because I get to decide what it is I want to do, and it's on my own timetable, and I just get to do it. So that makes this job really creative, and it makes it change all the time. Another job that all professors have to do is service, and that is service to the university and also service to the community. Service to the community is related to the work that I do as a family life educator. Service to the university are things that happen behind the scenes. We serve on committees, we govern the university, we control the curriculum of the university through these committees that we're on. I chair a committee on student ratings. I chair a committee on academic standards and grading. And I serve on other committees. Those are the kinds of work that professors do as part of their job. In family life education, I've done primarily 2 things that are quite different. Both of them are in the area of parent education. I work with Kids Turn, which in the past has offered parent education for families who are going through the court system. Actually, anyone who's getting divorced could sign up for a Kids Turn class, but it is a court-approved program, and so most of the parents who come there have been ordered by a judge to complete parenting education, and they come to Kids Turn. I've served as a consultant for the program in general, and in addition to that, every session that is offered, I will spend 1 session with all parents who have children under the age of 2 because I have expertise in infancy, and the program kind of lacks training related to attachment, and so I insert that into the program. I have sent a lot of my students to work in the Kids Turn program, and I've just been very involved in the running of the program and how it's administered. I want to say something about this so you have a sense how this works. Each program works differently, but the way Kids Turn works is both parents ideally are in the program, and all the women go to one group and all the men go to another group. By the way, then all of the children also participate, and they are sent into groups based on their ages where they participate in activities. Kind of a lot of it is art-based and play-based, where they have a chance to talk about the divorce or the separation that's happening in their families. But when you sit down with a group of, in my case, I would sit down with a group of mothers who are in the middle of a divorce, before any education happens, there has to be a lot of rapport building. And so we sit and talk about our experiences as mothers, as parents who are undergoing a lot of stress, as people who are being ordered by a court to do something. We feel very powerless and out of control, and it's very frightening. And so all of those things become part of the process before we can really talk about issues related to parenting. So this requires us to fold together a lot of different interpersonal skills in addition to having academic expertise in effective parenting. This is very different from what happens in the other environment in which I teach parenting classes, and that is a religious setting, a church that has a monthly parenting class. And so generally every month I will decide what I want the topic to be that month. However, I often ask parents, what are the areas you're having issues with that I should put on the agenda? So we have somewhat of a collaborative agenda. But in a church environment, the program is completely voluntary, and people feel very differently about being there. They are excited to kind of pick my brain. They are very grateful. I think at the end of every parenting class in this church environment, People hug me. They just say, thank you so much for discussing this really difficult thing with us. I've kind of wanted guidance and wanted to hear from somebody to help with this really difficult thing for a long time, and I'm so grateful that you've sort of come into my life this way. So these two experiences are very different. Parents in both cases tend to be quite grateful. Parents in both cases enjoy parenting classes. They enjoy a space where they get to think about themselves as parents, talk to other people specifically about parenting, to get suggestions. Parents tend to enjoy this. Parenting is a really enormous part of people's lives, and yet it's one that happens a little bit invisibly. There's not a lot of people you talk to about it, and it's very personal, and all of us feel very sensitive about the perception that someone else might be criticizing our parenting. And so these are both really they're very core to the identity of the people we work with. And so it's a huge privilege, really, to be allowed into this aspect of people's lives and to have that kind of time to work with them. I find it so rewarding. I tried to come up with a couple of words for each one of these aspects of my career, and the professor job is just so creative. It requires so much creativity, and it's vibrant. It changes all the time. Every semester, I can totally redo my class if I want to. And I often do, because I'm always thinking about better ways to teach this class, or ways that I could try using this strategy and instead of that strategy, and maybe that will help people get something that I know they're having a hard time getting. And so it changes all the time. And research is that way too. It gets to be whatever I want it to be. And so the topics are whatever I make it. Even the service I engage in, I get to pick the service that is of interest to me, and all of us get to do that. So I really sort of feel like being a college professor is probably one of the greatest jobs ever. It requires a lot of independent working. You set your own timetable, you get stuff done on your own deadlines. People aren't really looking over your shoulder. There's not very much structure. And so, and payoff is a long time coming. Research projects will often be going for a couple of years, and then the writing might take a year, and then the process of getting a paper reviewed and published might take another year. So they're sort of long-term investments, despite the fact that the job itself is kind of different every day. I find that very exciting. The family life education, I do it because I find it very important in the world. I want to have some part of my job that I think is making an important impact on making the world a better place. And there's nothing quite as immediate as talking to parents who are in the trenches, as they say. They're doing a super hard job, and it really is often a very thankless job. And so parents need support to do that kind of job. And when I get to do it, I feel like I'm really making an important contribution. It is also powerful, but the power of it means that it's draining. I think it would be hard to do family life education full time without having other components of your job, because the investment that you put into prepping the materials before you're going to go give a talk or meet with a group of parents, that's intense. The emotional experience of doing it is intense, and then there has to be kind of a slowdown or a cooling off period afterwards, because it's just dramatically intense stuff. Because of those things, it's also really inspiring. It's the part of my job that I feel like I do the most good in the world, is parent education. It's also really relational. It can't be done without relationship. And relationship always has to be attended to carefully, and so it's deeply interpersonal, which, by the way, is not often so true with the research and service part of my my job. Those are often, I work with data, I run statistics, I write, and a lot of that is solitary work. And so these two things together are kind of balance. They provide a balance for me. Dr. Hammond's asked me to talk about the career path. How does one get into a situation like I am with this job? And I don't know how much you really. I think it's very individual. People do this so differently. I grew up in a very blue-collar family in Missouri. My dad was a janitor, 4 kids. You can see us there on the screen. My parents got divorced when I was in college, right around the time this picture was taken. There was a lot of strife. There was a lot of economic insecurity. My mom worked part-time in retail, and my dad was homeless for a long time. That was a lot of strife when I was in high school. When I was in college. I had graduated from an all-girls Catholic high school before that happened. So I had this very working class Catholic background. And then my parents were struggling and getting divorced, and I went off to college. I went to, like Fresno State students, I went to a state university that was not very far from my home. It was about 2 hours from my home, University of Missouri-Columbia. I graduated with a degree in human development and family studies. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. This is the story of my career path, is that I've not really ever known what I want to do. I always just sort of take the next thing as it comes. After I got my bachelor's degree, since I didn't know what I wanted to do, I went into a volunteer program, and I lived in eastern Kentucky. I lived in a Benedictine monastery with the sisters that you see there, a small monastery. So I lived in a religious community, and I did 2 things basically. You can see me face painting. That was in an elementary school that I worked in. I worked in a first grade classroom, just assisting the first grade teacher. And we did things like, that was, I think, maybe it was the Halloween party, and that's why she's dressed up like that, and I provided face painting. But most of my time was spent in an adult literacy program, teaching adults to read. And you can see in this picture we've been doing some science experiments. But I worked with essentially white poverty in Appalachia. I learned a lot about poverty. I learned a lot about food insecurity. I learned a lot about problems in an educational system, such that most of these people in this picture had graduated from high school and yet could not read. I learned a lot about family dynamics. One of the women in the picture there, her 16-year-old had been expelled from school, and so came to most of these classes with us. I learned a lot about how intimate partner violence sometimes appears in impoverished settings like this, and how it plays out differently when the people involved lack resources to get help for their situation. So it was a really eye-opening experience for me to be in this volunteer program. One of the things I learned doing it is that I need more variety in my life. I could not work in that first grade classroom all day, every day. And I could not have worked with the adult literacy program all day, every day. I felt that I needed more variety. I loved what I did, but I needed to have a little bit more control over how my life was going to go than to have a job where I was in the same environment every day. That's sort of what I got out of that. And because I learned that, I went back to graduate school. I wanted a graduate degree, and I still didn't know what it was. I went back to my where I got my bachelor's degree, University of Missouri-Columbia. I thought maybe I wanted to be a counselor. I thought maybe I'd want to be a teacher. I didn't know, but I was really interested in studying some more about the things that I had witnessed in the volunteer program. And so I stuck with family studies, and I became very interested in race, class, and culture. So I studied a lot of race, class, and culture, as they related to family science. And so these were the kinds of things that I studied. And essentially, I just kept going until I finished my PhD. Now, I was very fortunate that at a school like Mizzou, as a graduate student, I can get an assistantship, which waived my tuition. So I worked usually 30 or 40 hours a week while I was in graduate school, but in jobs that were on campus, and those jobs came with tuition waivers. And so that allowed me to stay in school as long as I needed to. I studied the cultural context of parenting for my dissertation research. I studied individualism and collectivism in Mexican American families and how that relates to the sleeping practices that families choose for themselves. So I finished that degree, and then we moved to Fresno, and I got a job with the University of California, San Francisco, Fresno Medical Education Program. This building wasn't there when I was working there, but this is currently where UCSF Fresno is located. I worked with medical doctors, and I taught them how to use medical research to answer clinical questions. And this went back to my interest in needing a really vibrant environment where the environment changes every day and you never quite know what you're going to get. And there's a lot of creativity in terms of what you do. You kind of make it what you want to do. And so I had an experience at UCSF Fresno, but I really missed child development, and I missed family science. So in 2004, I came to Fresno State and got on the faculty, and I've been here ever since. And like I said, family life education has been part of what I've been doing all along with all those different environments that I've been working in. Do I have any advice for college students if you might be interested in one or both of these jobs? I guess I do have a few things. If you're interested in working on a university campus, I highly recommend that you take methods and statistics classes as an undergraduate student. They have a reputation for being hard classes, and sometimes they are hard classes, but that preparation will really be good for you in graduate school. It doesn't mean that your entire life is consumed by research in graduate school and in academia, but if you don't like that part of the job, then you're probably not going to like the job. So take those classes now and see if you discover that they empower you. They give you a way to think about things that was different than how you thought about it before, and see if they don't excite you. That's what they did for me. If they don't, then maybe being a college professor is not what you should do. Find a professor with whom you can do research. In our department, all of the tenure track faculty are active scientists with research agendas. We all have projects going at different stages in each project. Sometimes we could use the help of a college student, and other stages we can't. So it'll depend, but if you're at all interested in this, ask the professors you work with what their research is about and if they could use any help. That's really great experience. And the other thing is just to talk to us. We all love our jobs. You wouldn't be in this job if you didn't adore it, frankly. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in our department who doesn't think that this is the greatest job possible. We love to talk about it. Ask us about our job, and if you're interested in it, that's really flattering to us, and we would sort of love to help nurture you along the way. So please don't be shy if you're kind of interested in maybe going into academia. If you want to go into family life education, which I strongly recommend, I think there's a great need in our society for more family life educators. Go to ncfr.org and read about certified family life education. NCFR is the organization that certifies people in family life education, and they require that you have educational background in certain areas, but they also can kind of put you in touch with people who do family life education. You can learn a lot about different kinds of family life education. For instance, I told you I do parenting education, but other big fields are relationship education, either premarital or marital, or couple communication, couple education of all kinds. It's a really big deal right now. Sex education is a really big deal right now. Providing information and sort of training for teenagers, for lots and lots of opportunities. Planned Parenthood in Fresno offers some sex education. They don't especially call themselves that, and I forget what they do call themselves, but these are big, big areas for family life education. Personal finance, kind of planning and that sort of thing is also an area for family life education, because, finance is different in business than it is for a home consumer who wants to buy a house, and they need to know how mortgages work and that sort of thing. So any of these are areas where you could do work as a family life educator. So you go to ncfr.org and you can learn about that. I think it's also a good idea to seek out and attend in as many family life education settings as you can. A lot of churches have parenting programs and relationship education programs, and many of them you could attend. You could see how you like it, how it's being taught, and please go to these things realizing that you're going to see people who are doing it well, and you're going to see people who are doing it poorly. There's no kind of required mandatory training to offer this kind of education, which is a bit of a shame. But you're going to see people who are doing it real well and people who are doing it real poorly. And you should go as a student, not necessarily of the content that they're teaching, but of the way they teach it. And watch. And when you recognize that somebody you think is very effective, watch what they're doing and think about, how do they build rapport with their learners? How do they correct someone who has a bias that is clearly problematic for them, but they're really sticking to it? That happens a lot in parent education for divorcing parents. People want to just convince you that what they've been doing all along is right, even when they're not getting very good results from it. Watch how the educator deals with that situation. Those are going to be the kind of things that you're going to need to know in the field, so to speak. And so while you have a little freedom in your schedule, check out as many of these things as you can and see how people are doing it. Last thing, please investigate your own biases. It's really impossible to do family life education from a completely knowledge-based point of view. It's a very intimate job, and people feel very, very sensitive about their parenting, about being judged for their parenting. Similarly, the quality of their marriage or their intimate relationship of any kind, people feel very sensitive about that because it's so deeply personal to us that they might desperately need help, and yet it's so hard to get help. And so you have to recognize that this job is unbelievably emotional and interpersonal. And to do a job like that, you really have to investigate your own biases. You have to recognize them. You have to grapple with them. Often you have to let them go, which you can't fake it. This is not the kind of thing you could just pretend not to have that bias and go in and teach the class. If you have it, it affects your class. It affects the way you teach. So we have to grapple deeply with these kinds of things about our own personal experiences, our own backgrounds, our own current experiences, and our own biases, our own limitations on what our experiences are. We have to really work to broaden our exposure, to understand families that are not like our own and people who are not like us. Learners need us to be authoritative. In parenting, authoritative parenting is both nurturing and firm. And the same is true for teaching. We must be nurturing and firm when we provide family life education. And I'm telling you, you can't be nurturing, you can't be compassionate, unless you have learned to be nurturing and compassionate with yourself, honest with yourself. And so those are the kind of things that I hope you'll be working on during college to prepare you potentially for career and family life education. And I hope you consider it. It's a really great line of work. Thanks for your attention, and have a good class.